the days in the midst of a year-long look at affordable housing in the region. What specifically do you think the legislature should do to help people who can't afford to buy a home or are struggling to rent an apartment?
Oh, you want me to give away my answers to that, huh? Well, as we know, it is a huge problem. There's our favorite sounds in New London. And it's unfortunate that we haven't been able to do as much with that as we have with other things this year. But I really hope to see the legislator create some kind of new policy where we can give some partial vouchers for those that are in need of housing. And when I say partial vouchers, I'm hoping that we can institute something that closes the gap with how much the prices for some of our new developments cost. Where if someone can only afford $800 a month, and the actual price is approximately $1,500 to $1,700, maybe there can be a partial voucher that can help them close that gap so they can live in some of these developments that are going up in New London. That's the hope. And then, of course, the full vouchers are something that I would like to see more of and have us invest more into also to help people.
Okay. What about purchasing a home? Do you have any strategies or ideas for that?
Well, the same would be for a home, trying to give some kind of, trying to have a fund available for those that is better than what we have now as far as first-time home buyer purchases or low-income purchases that try and help people get into homes that would help close the gap with those that are struggling and need affordable housing. So it all has to do with money, unfortunately, and the legislation has to be willing to set aside a great deal of money, similar to that we need in the schools, to try and close the gap with our education problem. So hopefully that can be something that we can start conversation about or try and create.
Well, as you mentioned, if it's about money, has there been any talks about increasing minimum wage even more than it already has, or?
Well, we recently did do that. Do we need to do it again? Probably sooner than later. I don't know the dynamics of what others are thinking, but obviously we all know that, for a livable wage, you have to make more than $20 an hour. We don't want to push minimum wage too hard because we don't want it to affect our businesses in a negative way also. So we have to keep in mind what it does to our businesses, especially our small businesses, when we increase the minimum wage. So that is a dialogue that I think is necessary, and I hope that we see it come up sooner than later also.
Okay, moving on. Connecticut recently enacted a law designed to provide safeguards against lawsuits for out-of-state patients seeking abortions in Connecticut and any provider who helps them. Do you support efforts to make Connecticut such a safe haven?
I do. And I want to say first and foremost that I support women's rights. There's no way that I believe a man should tell a woman what to do with her vagina. It's just something that I think she has the right to control. I am worried in regards to when it comes to youth. Connecticut's laws now allow kids 17 and under to have abortions and not tell their parents. That is a very hard swallow for me. With this new law that we enacted, there was no discussion about youth that came from other areas. I was concerned because originally when they had the committee meeting, the DPH commissioner didn't have anything to help us, understand where she was in regards to that bill. And I just recently found, after having a long conversation with DPH staff, is that at the time of the committee meeting, there was a lot of people trying to find out the scope of practice with that, and it included the Attorney General and internal lawyers for it. So at the time of the meeting, they did not have documentation ready to show or say what they had an opinion in regards to, which kind of worried a lot of legislators because having DPH have input is really important when it comes to that. I've also found out that soon after, right probably before the bill going to the floor, that information was sent to some of the chairpersons on the committee, but I don't think that it was spread to the total group of legislators that should have seen that information. And if it was something I missed, then that it was something that I have to look back and check on. But in regards to seeing that information in time for me to vote on it, I didn't believe that I had gotten that information. And I know it's two different topics, but it is a big worry for me that a child can come from out of state and come into Connecticut and get an abortion. And then my concern was, okay, when that child leaves, what happens after that child comes back, or after that child leaves and has an issue with the treatment that they had just went through. So I had a lot of constituents call in regards to that and not wanting me to vote for it. I had constituents call me to vote for it. I did not at the time believe that it affected Connecticut as to me not supporting it. And I didn't support it at that time because I was worried about the non-input of what do we do when it comes to youth. And I understand it's Connecticut's law already, but I have a problem with Connecticut's law when it comes to youth being able to do something that transformative to their bodies, but at the same time, we have standards for kids to vote. We have standards for kids to drive a car. We have standards for kids to smoke marijuana. We have standards for kids to drink alcohol. But when it comes to something like that, you would think there would be a standard that we should go by other than a kid having to have counseling from the person who's going to do the procedure and give them an opportunity to reach out to a parent. But if the kid says no, and the other problem I think with that would be, how do we know that the person, if the adult with the kid is the parent? Can you ask the question if it's the parent? Those are just some of the concerns that I had. So I decided not to support that bill at the time. But in no way does that mean that I do not support women's rights. It just meant I did not like that there was a lack of understanding, and the technicalities in regards to that topic was not something we went through to discuss.
Thank you for that lengthy and
I'm sorry, it was lengthy.
No, very thorough response. Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes you have to have a lengthy response because some people just hear the beginning, and then they go off of the beginning of, the why or why not. So I really want people to understand that I'm not against women's rights. I support women's rights and the women's ability to do or have the say for her business. For her body. But when it comes to youth, it's just a real concern.
Alrighty. And my third question is, the state surplus has grown over $4 billion. Do you support the decision to use some of that to lower the state's pension debt, or do you think more should be returned to the taxpayer?
Unfortunately, it can't be returned back to the taxpayer. Because it is in the law that says it has to go back to the pension to alleviate us of the high pension debt that we have. I think it's in the area of 41 million. It might be less now because of what we just added to it this year. But I don't think that, as far as I know, we can't give it back to residents. if there was a way to, I would be willing to have the discussion, because there are a lot of things that I think, like education, that we should catch up on, and close the gap with the funding that is needed for that also. But at this time, because of how it's written, it must go back to the pension, unfunded pension.
And how should Connecticut move forward to address climate change with regards to electric vehicles, wind power, and other clean energy strategies?
Well, we have to change how we've been doing things, in regards to the rebates and some of the things that we need to do to help people get into those vehicles that will save or help with our environment. We can't just expect people to go out and buy $70,000 cars and not have some kind of assistance to get into them. It's well understood that with all the things that are going on with our weather, that we have issues, and it's time for legislators to come together and talk about some more serious ways that we can conquer trying to help make our environments better. And I think that starts with our urban communities, in regards to some of the injustices that are happening when it comes to where we place some of these corporations or some of these places that produce a lot of that negative pollution that affects us.
What kind of injustices, more in depthly, are you referring to?
Well, more of what our urban communities have to deal with when it comes to some of the combustions from some of these places that, whether it's the sewers, the smell from the sewers, sometimes when the weather's right, you smell the poop that's, emanating from the areas where they're trying to put it through the system. So I think trying to help deal with those instances, I think, is something that we need to do.
And any thoughts in regards to wind power?
Wind
power?
As far as our state pier, I think our state pier is going to be very transformative for the state of Connecticut. I understand that prior to me going into office, there was a lot of things that went wrong with state pier, and unfortunately, those things had happened. And now I think we have tighter, we have a tighter watchdog on it with the new committees that we have. I think also that there are people now in positions over there that are going to make sure and keep people accountable. Plus, we as legislatures need to keep people accountable. I think there is such a positive thing for not only the state, but for New London. It's going to create jobs. It's created economic, helped our small businesses with some of the workers that we have over there now. And I look forward to it being a positive thing once it's done, especially to create a new space for larger cargo. It's going to be very transformative, I think.
Okay. And the fifth question is, do you think the 2020 election was conducted fairly and Joe Biden won? Do you support early voting and voting by mail initiatives?
President Biden is our president. I'm not sure how people can be confused about that, but he is the president. I definitely do support early voting. Gives people an opportunity to have a option to voting early because of not maybe being able to make it to the polls. I think that's something that is going to be a positive thing for Connecticut moving forward, to make sure that everybody gets an opportunity, the easiest opportunity to vote that they can.
And that goes the same for mailing initiatives?
Yes. Yes.
Alrighty, and to round it out, I'm going to ask you more questions for our district. So you were a supporter of the accountability bill, is that correct, for police?
Oh, yes, I was.
Did that create any kind of rifts with coworkers that you had for supporting that bill, and how have you been able to balance being a police officer and working in working up in Hartford at the same time?
It definitely did create a rift for me over there. I became on an island by myself with many of my colleagues, but I do know that came because of incorrect information that was given out, especially by the union at the time, which is different from this union. There was a lot of negativity in regards to people thinking they were losing a qualified immunity, which we all know now that is not the truth. I actually just happened to be able to go through accreditate the I just forgot what it was called, research. And I was very happy to see in the research how they explained to officers that they do not lose it. And they also explained that other things in the bill, how positive it was. There could be some things in the bill that many want to see different, but I believe it has helped us move on from some of the horrific things that we keep seeing in the news. So I think that it's something that strengthened our community and our police department. Even though police just do not like to be told what to do. I mean, that's the bottom line. But I think with a lot of the systematic racisms and the things in regards to how policing started years ago, we must change a lot of those things, and that is to make it better for both police and our community.
And how has it been, the second part to that question was, how has it been managing, working in Hartford and being a police officer at the same time?
It's a scale, sometimes it's up and sometimes it's wavering. Something that I enjoy, making myself be able to accomplish something as this is very important to me. It gives me an opportunity to show people that it can be done, that you do not have to limit yourself to just your job alone when you're trying to help change the community in which you live. I've done that for 23 years now, or almost 23 years with the police department now, and I felt that being state rep, that I could do it even more, and I believe that is what is happening.